Viewpoints on the talk station, FM 107 AM 1240. We're hoping to chat with Andy Jackson. He's a political science professor at Lewisburg College. We want to chat with him about the issue of the Board of Elections' efforts to reform balloting, and particularly during this, the early session for these congressional races, particularly the third congressional race. Absentee ballots are going out. So what about this issue of ballot harvesting that was such an embarrassment and a challenge for the 9th Congressional District? So maybe if we can, we'll get him on. But in the process, give me an opportunity to talk to you about, of course, one of our sponsors, Advanced Office Solutions, committed to making the business the one that you're building successful. And as always, to remind you, Advanced Office Solutions is the source for all things linear products, linear service. If you have a linear product in your office and you're looking for someone to help maintain it and possibly even upgrade it, the folks at Advanced Office Solutions can do that. And they can do so much more. They can help you with the purchase of equipment. They can help you arrange for leasing situations for office equipment and office furniture. And they can even help you with networking solutions. If you want to find out more, give them a call. It's a local number, 393-1112. It's a family-owned business. Folks have lived here all their lives. 393-1112 is that phone number. You can go online to advosi.com. Integrity, reliability, and affordability. Advanced Office Solutions, a local supplier of linear products. They do business with you the way you want to do business with them. Again, integrity, reliability, and affordability. And that number, 393-1112. So what we're going to see if we can arrange is get a conversation started on this issue of absentee ballots, because this is a big topic now as a result of the 9th Congressional District. And, of course, one of the difficulties has been the Board of Elections has been saying they want to reform the system. And we have joining us this evening, and I thank him for taking the time, Professor Andy Jackson. We've got all these professors joining us here. We're getting, as we like to say here at the talk station, Andy, we're smart radio. Dr. Andy Jackson, political science, and he is an adjunct professor at Lewisburg College. Andy, thank you for taking the time to be with us.
My pleasure.
This topic of, reform, ballot reform, what is the future of that in North Carolina? They're still doing more investigations about some of the situation down in the 9th Congressional District. Not all. One county they've kind of ignored, but they're still looking at this. Is it possible to truly reform this procedure, and can it be done before the 2020 election?
There are certainly some things that can be done, and certainly it can be done before the 2020 election, but it has to be done during this year's long session. So there's now that we've had the report from the State Board of Elections, that's kind of the kickoff for activities geared towards getting something done this year in the General Assembly.
Now, the question, of course, goes to, is there sufficient motivation within the General Assembly to tackle this? Now, granted, the 9th Congressional District has gotten a lot of national play, but it's going to fast move to the back pages of the newspaper if it doesn't totally fall out of the newspaper or the topic of conversation. So, this whole issue of voter integrity, the whole topic of accuracy in our polling and, our voting procedures, I'm wondering if there's really that much commitment to that. And by the way, is North Carolina the only ones looking at possibly reforming its absentee balloting process as well?
Well, I'll talk about the second thing first. There are other states that look at these. Just in the last several years, both Arizona and Montana have made ballot harvesting illegal. Arizona, for its part, is facing an active lawsuit from the Democratic Party there that wants to have that law stricken. So there's certainly an awareness of ballot harvesting and other absentee ballot issues, voting integrity issues. As far as North Carolina, I think there's certainly a will within the General Assembly to do something, but the question is that something going to be substantial enough to actually address the issue, or is it just going to be do some window dressing and just kick the can down the road. And my fear is it's going to be the latter.
Right. Well, let's share with the audience something that you gave to me the last time we talked several weeks back. In California, ballot harvesting is legal. Am I correct on that?
That is true. It is legal in California, and they just legalized it back in 2016.
Okay.
So
I would argue. Okay, but
I
would argue in some regards that by making this a legal activity, you're actually, and of course, we can get into this issue of making voting convenient and trying to provide more opportunities. I can see those who are seeing voting as a rite of passage, a privilege, that ballot harvesting for those folks is seen as a good advertisement to vote. You just said a few moments ago that one party, and I think it was the Democrat Party, is challenging Arizona because it's made ballot harvesting illegal. I'm thinking these are people that are saying, wait a second, ballot harvesting is a good way to assure we've got more people who are voting. I mean, that's one of the arguments.
And it is. I mean, you could at least conceivably have an increase in turnout, but the question is, it's kind of a quantity versus quality argument. Mm-hmm. You have people that are generally not interested in voting. Right. They're essentially passive agents here that probably would not think about voting unless this was brought up to them. Now, sometimes it's good. Both parties have get out the vote activities where they try to encourage people they believe are going to vote for them to do so. The issues with ballot harvesting is that you actually have people working for the party for the interest of a candidate or a party or an interest group in the room or around the person while they're marking their ballot. This is the kind of electioneering that we have banned in in-person voting. You're not allowed to go around and encourage people to vote for a particular candidate, for example, while you're marking your ballot in the ballot booth, in the voting booth.
Right.
So, but with ballot harvesting, you certainly do have people in contact, aside from the direct issues with direct ballot security. What is these folks going to do with the ballots that they harvest? It's the question of this sort of undue influence over people who are essentially passive agents. They become not really active citizens in the process, but just cogs in the wheel of the parties. Now, this is not really what I believe anybody's vision of democracy is, but that's what we have. And this is really a throwback to the old machine days of the 19th century.
Right. And the other aspect of this, and one that is really kind of makes me cringe, is the fact that I harvest the ballots, and then knowing, while I may not know how this ballot may be sealed, but having talked to Andy Jackson, who happens to, by the way, to be our guest today, and I know that he has a proclivity to be more conservative or more liberal other than me. Let me put it to you that way. Gosh, I lost Andy, I know I saw the ballot was somewhere on my desk. I don't know where it is. As it travels down the roadway in the back of a trash truck. So, I mean, that's the other aspect of it. This could actually mean that ballots never get counted.
And that is part of the what is alleged that McCrae Dowless did back down in Bladen and Robeson counties. Now, there are ways to safeguard that somewhat. For example, you can check, if you go to the State Board of Elections, you can actually check and see if your ballot had been submitted. That is public information.
Right.
You can look up and see if your neighbors have voted yet. But in a lot of instances, it may be too late to get to an election before you figure out that has happened. Or if it's like a community organization that is doing this sort of thing, you may trust those people. So you might not even think to check. There's a lot of folks that hand their ballots over, and they don't even know that ballot harvesting is a crime in North Carolina. They think that somebody's there helping them when, in fact, those folks are really doing it at the service of a candidate or a party.
Our guest this afternoon, Andy Jackson, professor, make that doctor, Ph.D., political science, where he's a adjunct professor at Lewisburg College. I'm going to get back to one other quick item with you, Andy, right after this break, and that is the future of, a nonpartisan, if such a group exists, independent redistricting, because that is a topic that's going to play out through the remainder of this year as well. You're listening to Viewpoints. Our guest this afternoon, Professor Andy Jackson. We're talking with him about, well, now coming up, the concept of redistricting. Stay with us. Okay, the other question for our guest this afternoon, and that Andy Jackson, he is with the Civitas Institute, and we're talking with him about an article recently done. As a matter of fact, yesterday, Rucho versus Common Cause, A Tale of Three Maps. Professor Andy Jackson with us. Let's talk about three maps. What is the future of the whole issue of redistricting? And of course, this is going all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court as well, is it not?
Yes, actually, they're doing oral arguments in Rucho versus Common Cause on the 26th. So that's coming up soon, and they'll have the decision later on this year.
Now, what is the future of this? Because, you know, the whole issue of gerrymandering has gone back now going on 300 years. It's been understood. And as one of my guests once said, to the victors go the spoils. So, they get to redraw their districts and select their voters rather than the voters selecting their candidates. But at the same time, over a period of time, the benefit, the shyness wears off. So things do change, as it happened in North Carolina, because, for a matter of fact, I think it was 140 years that this has been a Democrat-controlled state. And then in 2000, and I'm trying to remember, 2006, 2010, that changed precipitously. Let's talk about this. What is the future of redistricting then?
There certainly seems to be some momentum in the General Assembly. There's two bills that are going through hearings right now that have different versions of a redistricting committee and some kind of supposedly nonpartisan process that would go into drawing the districts. Now, both of them do leave it to the General Assembly to give final approval, although you would suspect that if the General Assembly rejected a map that came from a nonpartisan commission, you'd be opening yourself up to yet another lawsuit. So there would probably be some incentive, if one of these bills passed, for the General Assembly to go along with maybe no more than a small tweak here or there. But it looks like there's starting to be some momentum. There's still resistance in the leadership on the Republican side, so it's not 100% guaranteed that there will be some kind of redistricting change coming forth, but there certainly seems to be some momentum in that direction. And we do have those two cases. We have Rucho versus Common Cause in the U.S. Supreme Court, and then we have another one, Common Cause versus Lewis, which is working its way through the state courts, and they're going to have their first hearing in July.
Now, in the case of Rucho versus Common Cause, although the Supreme Court's decisions are usually announced, well, in July, are they not? July, August?
Don't quote me on that, but I do believe so. They have two sessions, and there's and I think the spring ones are done in the early summer.
I'm going to be interested in seeing if in fact the Supreme Court comes down on a decision of Rucho versus Common Cause, if that will in some way alter the decision from the North Carolina Supreme Court.
Well, there's slightly different things, because the one in the Supreme Court is only dealing with congressional districts, right, and the Lewis versus Common Cause is just with state districts, the North Carolina House and Senate. So they're slightly different.
As we wrap it up with you, Professor, and again, Professor Andy Jackson with us, and we're chatting with him about now this case of redistricting. In light of the conflicts that we've been seeing in court cases across the country, are we coming to, shall we say, an awareness on the part of all parties, that's Democrat, Republican, Independent, and Constitutional, as well as just the independents, or unaffiliated, that maybe there needs to be a more formalized and formulaic approach to both how we vote and the structure for our voting, that is, or the way we set up our districts?
There seems to be, it does seem to be going in that direction. Now, I'm personally agnostic on this issue at the moment. I do want to see what these proposals are, because one of the reasons we haven't had the Supreme Court intervene is because the court has traditionally held this to be a political issue. That is not something that is best handled by the courts. And so if the Supreme Court does find, for example, in favor of common cause in this is going to be a breaking of precedent. And there is a danger there of having bodies that are kind of outside the political sphere making these kinds of political decisions. The real question is what are the criteria you're going to use to draw the map? And right now, partisanship has been allowed. Nobody's denying that partisanship was a factor in the current congressional districts, for example. The question is, are they going to strike that down as a consideration? And if you do, then what are the other allowed criteria that you can use?
And then, eventually everything becomes partisan, no matter what. Stay with me. I want to chat with you briefly off air. Andy Jackson with us this afternoon. We're talking about the issue of voting, ballot harvesting, and redistricting.